All right, and then I'll bring up my screen. Our pictures of our world travels. And then let's play this from the start. Oops, did I lose it? Play from the start. Okay, we're on our world tour. Are you ready? Not just France, but we're going all over. Germany, Australia, New Zealand, well, California, Oregon, of course, and then seeing what's up in South America and South Africa. But here's the grape. We're gonna get to know it well. Let's pay attention to these pine-like clusters where it takes its Pinot name. And with its many variants, Pinot Blanc, Pinot Gris, here we have the pine-shaped Noir, the black skin variant of this grape who's had many years of cultivation. So yeah, we were like, well, what can we do? I mean, obviously it's from Burgundy, but second to just United States, France, where Pinot Noir is really finding a home, and it'll be interesting as climate warms and what continues to be replanted. Pinot Noir from Germany definitely has a place. It's third, again, next to United States and France in just levels of production. So we use this Frederick Becker, and he's coming from the Pfalz region of Germany, so it's a little further south. And right across the border, not too far away from Burgundy, but in Alsace, where they're growing these grapes. And kind of what's funny about it too, because even though he's based in this Pfalz region, and even an area that has this history of going back and forth between either French or German property, really he has to cross the border to harvest about 70% of his grapes, and 70% of it, this Pinot Noir, is actually from Alsace. 30% of it is from Pfalz region of Germany that makes it into this blend. So if you actually look on the backhand side, we put Pfalz because we know where the producer is located, but it doesn't say anything. Well, it's Qualitats wine, but it's just a product of Germany. And I think they can just do that from where the wine is actually being made. So we tied you to both regions, France and Germany, but really just had gotten to be known for the quality of Pinot Noirs, and one of the first to focus on that varietal from Germany. And this is a 2015, but we loved how really fresh and just vibrant and easy drinking it is. Something that would be great for even this time of year. It doesn't show developed characteristics. I don't mean to get sidetracked on it. We poured this even for a little while by the glass, and it was kind of a nice transition because going into springtime, not this particular vintage, but prior to that, we had Pinot Noir from the Jura, this producer Chateau d'Arlet, and that was so much different. It was kind of a little browning in color. It was a little volatile. I mean, it was kind of pickly, but it was a little more savory and kind of on that low intervention, slightly wilder, more savory edge. So it was a nice going from this Pinot Noir from the Jura, from a more like low intervention producer, and it's a little wild and funky. And then you get into something like this Becker from Pfalz/Alsace, where it's just really fresh and it's vibrant and it's pretty, and kind of what you want Pinot Noir to be is also just easy drinking, just in a little bit in the way that this particular wine shows. But having many generations in this southern Pfalz region, 7 generations, just talking about his background, where it was a total farm beforehand, eventually recognizing their potential with their hillsides to probably replant and focus on grape growing for winemaking. And as many did, they would sell their fruit to larger co-ops. But a few decades ago, it was Fritz Senior that decided to take all their Pinot and bottle it under their family's name. And then he was the one in the 70s to also come up with this Fox label, which is what they're kind of known for. And I think this is cool as well. They were one of the first to start using barrique for their Pinot Noir. So instead of like just these large used neutral vessels, which maybe even gives oxidative quality to these wines, here they were investing in similar aging techniques that you'd even find in the best of Burgundy. So that investment in quality, and then again, I got to pick my grapes today. Well, let me just hop on over to France and I'm going to grab 70% of my fruit, and then I'm coming to come back and blend that with my wines from Germany and make the wine from it. And then notice just a little bit on like some of their top cuvées. I don't even think this is released in the United States, but also coming from these like almost like Grand Cru sites of Alsace. You can see that we share some similar to soils to what we find in Burgundy with this limestone, a little clay, limestone, lighter, brighter, fresher styles, preserved acidity, limestone, clay, softer, sometimes retains more water, but producing usually fuller, richer, more textured, concentrated wines. So if you see clay based, softer, rounder, more concentrated, a little more weight to it, limestone, a little more chiseled, a little bit more linear, a little more acidity. And then these are some of the clones, because it becomes a conversation. We'll try to simplify it a little bit or just build some understanding around it. But Dijon, some of them coming from France. They're great because they ripe clones that will usually ripen earlier than other Pinot Noir vines. So it's great in a cool climate. You can ensure ripeness of fruit. Dijon. German Marienfelder. I don't know much about this one. It was even hard to find out about it, but we have a little bit of a German variation and being used in this blend. And then when we talk about wines, just remember this: destemmed. They're removing the stem. They're removing the berries from the stems before they crush it and allow it to ferment. And it produces a softer, more delicate fruit style. I'll say it because it needs to make sense. So instead, if you just crush it and you ferment the juice, not only with the skins, but the stems intact, those stems, you can almost imagine it giving a little texture and a little backbone and a little grip. So, and it's good to look at this in real life circumstance, right? Like, so if you crush the grapes when the berries are intact on the stem. The stems give backbone and tannins and structure to it. Okay, it might even give for ageability and even durability, I suppose, but it gives backbone. But if you destem the grapes from the cluster, crush it and just ferment the juice of the skins by itself, without the stems, no stems, just the berries. It's just a softer, lighter style. So that's what he's trying to accomplish right here. And then there's no new oak flavors. It's all used barrels. 10% of it is these smaller barriques that you see in Burgundy, but it's more about the preservation of fruit. And then he's a member of this local growers association that's dedicated to quality and recognized by this major publication, Gottmelu, is one of the top estates in Germany. And this is good to know, like if you do or do not have these wines, so don't worry. But then we took you to Australia. Like we have a New Zealand class coming up next Tuesday. We're certainly going to highlight Central Otago. I feel a lot of us have probably had an Oregon Pinot Noir, you know, and we could have certainly brought you something from California, but where else wonderful Pinot Noir is being made. And this is another one that we've just enjoyed. Mac Forbes and the way that it drinks, coming from the Yarra Valley, southeastern part of Australia and Victoria. But when we bring up a map a few slides down the road, we can see that is positioned geographically, that is more influenced by this Arctic, cool Arctic coast and in proximity. Why it's great for these lighter styles of Pinot Noir. He grew up near some of these famous vineyards, Mac. He went over and learned from some of the best in Europe, came back, started his own label in 2004. And then this is good. Are you ready? We don't even have the map of Yarra Valley up, but it talks about his vineyards and it also breaks down the Yarra. The lower Yarra is actually further north and it's lower lying, but it's a warmer area producing softer styles of fruit. Okay. And the upper Yarra is actually further south, and we'll review it when I have a map, but it's closer by the water. And it's just at higher elevation where it gets the name upper. Well, at higher elevation, upper Yarra, it's cooler region, producing lighter fruit with more preserved acidity. It's a little bit brighter. So sometimes you can provide the richness and warmth from the lower lying vineyards in Lower Yarra, further north, and you can complement that with the brightness and the freshness of the Pinot Noir growing up at higher elevation, Upper Yarra, if we do it that way. So, and then you can break down all the names of his different sites, and then what sites he sources from to go into this Yarra Valley, because he also does single vineyards. I again don't know if they're available similar to Becker's like Grand Cru sites, but you know, then if we apply this, oh, he's got a little fruit from Coldstream, Lower Yarra, warmer region, producing, giving body. Well, he also has some Pinot Noir from these areas of Warra, Yalak, and Yarra Junction, Seville, and Westburn, but I don't really know what they are. But wait, I remember that they're from the cooler sites and higher elevation Upper Yarra, so that must bring the brightness to it. Wonderful, just neutral oak, so he's not bringing any flavors of oak. That's not the idea. You're preserving freshness of fruit. A little bit of whole cluster, giving backbone. It's only in a small percentage. He's leaving 10% of the fruit with the stems, giving it a little bit of texture. It's not all or nothing, but he wants to build a little bit of extra texture in how he does this. This is just kind of fun. He a lot of the fruit is stomped by foot, traditional, right? And some of it is just, even when it's fermenting, he'll plunge it by hand. So the hands-on work, and then they break down the clones here as well. What the heck is all of this, you guys? 1114, 1115, 777. All this doesn't mean a darn thing. Well, it does. These are also Dijon clones. If you ever see like 114, 115, 667, 777, all Dijon clones, similar to Becker. And what do we know about Dijon clones? Well, coming from Burgundy and what's mostly planted in Burgundy, and why it does well there is because it's earlier ripening variation of the Pinot varietal. So it does better in cooler climates. Here, it's probably just, well, if you're thinking cooler versus warmer area, a varietal that might do better is an earlier ripening, might prefer a little bit of longer hang time in a cooler region. Otherwise, it ripened too darn quick. And this MV6, get ready for MV6. Hey, I just have to show you this, you guys. I wonder if you are enjoying these. I don't know if you can see that, but look at the difference in color on these two. I hope you can kind of see that. I don't know if that translates really well through the video, but this is the Mac Forbes. Look how much lighter and prettier that is. That that could be coming from a couple things, either time with the skins, maceration, perhaps the temperature of the maceration, and even berry size. This is the Becker from Germany / Pfalz, where it's a little bit darker, but the Mac Forbes on the back, even though it's New World, it's only 11% alcohol. I don't even know if that's accurate or not. So he must be picking earlier or doing something to get such a lighter style. But the things that might contribute. And then this isn't anything overwhelming. It's only 13.5% alcohol in a relatively warm vintage, 2015, when we look at Germany. Well, thanks for sitting through all that. I got totally carried away, but I thought we covered some important things and we saw how it applied to specific wines. So thanks for bearing with me there. But now we're just going to look at the grape. What's its background? Well, they're thinking that it was probably being grown for over 2,000 years. It is related to this ancient varietal Sauvignon, which is, parental varietal to many, if it's not even some of these old aromatic varietals like Traminer and so on and so forth. But an ancient varietal where it eventually, well, let's slow myself down. We talked about that on the first slides, but black meaning Pinot, pine is just meaning black Pinot Noir, Pinot meaning pine, and that's just, again, the shape of the berries and how it grows. It's a tight cluster, and it's not very large in size. When they have to worry about how it grows in the vineyards, there's not a lot of air that gets through these grapes, so there might be even a concern of mold or rot if you're in a maritime humid region. But here, when does it actually become officially documented? It appeared in print in 1375. Sometimes you check different sources. I saw 1345, but I would trust this number right here in front of us. So in about the 14th century, Previously, they mentioned it being noted as Morillon in 1283. And some of these grapes are related. If you study wines, you might even hear, well, Morillon, that sounds familiar. Isn't that the name of Chardonnay in Austria? Yes, it is. But they also same Chardonnay seems to be a related varietal to. No, I'm getting ahead of myself there, where it's like, because Chardonnay has this Gouais Blanc, but there could be a similar shared history. But I'm getting ahead of myself there, or I'm speaking too soon a little bit. But one of was maybe first mentioned. Growing in a cooler climate, we probably saw the movie Sideways. It's thin-skinned, it's finicky. It can't stand the heat of a warmer growing condition, much like a thick-skinned Cabernet. So that's why it's usually by the coast or further inland or at a latitude that makes sense for growing this grape. If it's in a warm climate, it doesn't give enough time to develop flavor. It'll just ripen too quick and the acid will drum it, just plummet really fast. So it's kind of like you get this diluted wine that is missing this concentration of flavors, and it's just kind of flabby with that dropped acidity. That would be the result if it was grown in warmer climates. So slow ripening time, building up flavors, preserving that acidity, and then you got concentration with brightness, and that's exactly what you want. And again, yes, it's incredibly susceptible to mutation and variation in the vineyards more than others. And that's how we started to see things like Pinot Blanc and Pinot Gris and Pinot Noir. But it's kind of funny too, the things you come across. There was, who knows the accuracy of this, but you could throw out a number where it was written that there are 1,000 different variations or clonal variations Burgundy, but of Pinot Noir, but there might only be like 20 different clonal variations of Cabernet. So that's quite a difference, and that's because it's changing and adapting very quickly in the vineyards, where it can take on different expressions and behaviors and how it grows. Now, what the heck? So it's fussy to work with, difficult to make. Like if you put Pinot Noir in too much oak, you're gonna see that right away. It's going to just taste like vanilla and ice cream and spice. Cabernet might wear it very well. Anyway, if you just mess up a little bit in the winery and the winemaking, it's more transparent, not only with reflective in the soils and the region and the climate that it's growing in, but also too, like you mess around in that winemaking too much, it'll be quicker to pick up on it versus maybe a bigger style wine that where it can be masked a little bit by the weight of the fruit. Anyway, what's up with these clones? Are you ready? Dijon, you know it's from Burgundy. Where did it actually come from? If you guys like Burgundy, there's a producer in Maurice Saint Denis, Domaine Ponceau, and that's where it was originally isolated and then replicated in Dijon in the 1970s, and that's where it all started. But just remember that it ripens early and it's a lighter, elegant style. Pommard. Well, this is also from Burgundy, from actually, is it Chateau Pommard? Also from the Pommard village. But we're going to review villages in a hot second here. Well, Pommard brings tannic, darker, more structured styles of Pinot. And that's exactly what you find with the clone. So if you forget everything else today, you could remember Dijon, light and elegant, Pommard, structured and dark fruit. And they usually use this Pommard in Oregon. It needs that little extra sun. Joseph Swan, the Swan clone out in Russian River Valley. You know where that came from? They think it might come from this producer's vineyard. Domaine de la Romanée-Conti is the name of the winery, the house. And Romanée-Conti is also the name of the most famous vineyard for all of Pinot Noir in the whole world. And if you want to know the most expensive Pinot Noir in the world, you're looking at it right here, this Romanée-Conti. It's just a small little plot we have a picture of in a moment. And they think that the Pinot Noir clones that went into eventually making the Swan clone in Russian River Valley of Sonoma came from this Romanée-Conti. Pretty light, kind of like Dijon. And then this is our MV6. Remember in our Mac Forbes? That came over almost 200 years ago by James Busby. This guy brought over a lot of grapes from Europe over to Australia and New Zealand. And then this is taken also from Burgundy, Clos Vougeot. I think why it's prized though is because, again, we're talking its transparency. Well, it was the monks in Burgundy that throughout the Middle Ages were planting these grapes, identifying vineyard sites, and documenting what the styles showed from this particular site right next to its neighboring sites, and would even build walls they call clos around it. But they were the ones to first identify and document these different sites that now make it onto these labels today. So they were one of the first, like, really, I guess, movers, or the ones to really focus on Burgundy as a region and the Pinot Noir grape. This is all during the Middle Ages. And then right along this time in the 14th century, there in Burgundy, there was a period of almost independent rule, but it was by this Duke of Valois. Well, there's two guys that we have to know about from this period of the Valois, Burgundy, right alongside of the period of the monks, kind of on the back end of it. But there was Philip the Good. We decided, everybody, you have to whip out the grape Gamay because it was too tart and too sour. So off it goes, and we're going to focus on replanting the area to Pinot Noir for its prized flavors in the way that it drank. So Philip the Good in the 14th century was the one to really promote the planting of Pinot Noir after all the work of the monks. And then it was Philip the Good's son, Philip the Bold. I think I'm saying that right. Might have switched that around, but he was the one then to move all the plantings up into the hillside to even expand on what the monks had already started. A lot of these monks, they were the ones to bring it all over to the eastern parts of Germany and Austria during the Middle Ages as well. So you'll see a lot of like clusters, like house or abbeys of in old winery titles in like Germany and whatnot too. And that's due to the monks' influence. And we're a Pinot Noir started making its way to Germany. Hey, you want to know something, you guys? Are you ready? Are you doing okay? We haven't even gotten anywhere yet. It was Charles the Fat in 884 that supposedly, even though it was Pinot Noir hasn't been officially documented, but there's stories that Charles the Fat brought Pinot Noir over to Baden, Germany in 884. But I'm just that movement of things going east during the Middle Ages and then some of the stories that surround it. I'm only maybe going to highlight a couple of these things because I think it's important to talk about before we start highlighting region. One major thing is a lot of people that join these classes are familiar with this, but if you're looking at Pinot Noir, reflective of place where it's grown, because it's a perfect conduit for that, just remember Old World, New World. If you have a wine coming from, a Pinot Noir coming from France or Germany, maybe like Northern Italy, Old World Europe, generally cooler, producing less ripe fruit, gives you less sugar, and that sugar is what's fermented into alcohol, which gives you less alcohol from this less ripe fruit, and alcohol is related to body and wine, so the wines will drink a little bit lighter. So Old World regions that are generally cooler, France, Germany, maybe like Northern Italy, are producing lighter, brighter, more acidic, tart, earthier styles. So it might be things like mushroom or forest floor, like tart cranberry and pomegranate like brightness that will define these wines, but just think lighter, earthier. And then New World, even when if we get over to Oregon or California or Australia, New Zealand, it's generally warmer. So we have riper fruit, more sugars, more alcohol, bigger, fuller bodied. With that extra alcohol in this warmer regions, it gives an intensity where the fruit just jumps out of the glass. So they're more expressive and they usually have a little more body to it. And they usually will tend to have a little bit more new oak. So just remember that. Old, and from where we go, and then you can apply those ideas of Old World and New World, and then you look specifically. Say we're in Sonoma, or we're by the coast where it's cooler, Sonoma coast. Well, we have less ripe fruit, producing less sugar, giving us lighter styles of wine. Also Sonoma, further inland, it's warmer. We're in the Russian River Valley. We have, just remember that. So the fruit that we're going to get from Russian River Valley, being warmer further inland, is going to give us a lot more sugar, a lot more alcohol, and this incredible ripeness of fruit and the fullest, biggest styles of Pinot Noir we'll find in the world. So just, we take those principles, old world, new world, and then we can apply that, just cool climate, how would that be influence, elevation, body of water, to determine style. And then we go into winemaking. Are they using oak of vanilla and spice and toastiness, these flavors that are contributing to the wine, or not? Like our producers, they're using used barrels, which might allow us for a little exchange of oxygen for light development, but they're not trying to lend flavors of creaminess or vanilla or sweet spice. That's not the point. So they want to preserve the fruit of just the Pinot Noir by itself. And again, we talked about whole cluster or destem, but this is a big conversation. A lot of people might just look at the vintage. If you have really ripe fruit with ripe stems, you might choose to use some of those stems to give that ripe fruit backbone. If you had a really poor vintage with less ripe fruit, you probably, and the stems might not even be that ripe, or they're kind of green, you might decide just to use the berries by themselves because you don't want any of those green stemmy flavors. It would maybe overpower the less ripe fruit that you have to work with on a cooler vintage. So sometimes you hear about these strong advocates, one or the other, but it's kind of like, well, why are they doing it? And what's the principle? What's the idea? What's the ideas behind it? Okay, we're going to look at Premier Cru and Grand Crus. We talked a little bit of soil type. It's growing all over the place. There's this example of this Chilean winemaker who decided to plant all this Pinot Noir on the coast of Casablanca, like right in the early 2000s. And it was a bold move because people weren't doing this at all this time. So it's this huge investment. And you're like, God, I hope I sell some Pinot Noir. And then all of a sudden the movie Sideways comes out and now everybody wants to drink Pinot Noir. I mean, this is when we were really just getting involved in wine and going, besides like Cabernet and Malbec, we're seeing what's new. And then all of a sudden everybody is becoming aware of this Pinot Noir grape. And then now this Chilean winemaker with all their new plantings is like, yay, you know, they struck gold. It worked out because it could have been the other way around really quick. So when new people or wineries are getting established, because of its popularity, it might be one of the grapes that they would consider planting first because it's well known, and maybe considering these new cooler areas of exploration around the world, really. And then just like in Burgundy, they're phoning in on vineyard specificity. Hey, this is a great thing though here too. It's power at the table. I don't even mean to say it's like your best friend at the table, because if you just want to drink red that night, it's light enough or it won't be overbearing to even like a citrus driven salad with a vinaigrette or something along those lines, or even your light delicate fish. You know, it can complement it, and even that brightness and that freshness in the wine can match the lightness and the freshness of a lighter dish. But as a red wine, it still has a little structure and power and weight to it. So if you even want a steak or a burger, you know, you might consider where that Pinot Noir is coming from. Well, I'm having something fuller tonight. I have 2 Pinot Noirs on that list. One's from Russian River, one's from Sonoma Coast. I'm not only having a burger, but I have that melted cheddar cheese on there and bacon. And it's also a bone marrow burger, so it's really, really rich. I better have some intensity to match that. Maybe I want that intensity coming from that riper fruit in Russian River Valley then. See where I'm going with that? So you can start going from there, but it'll have enough to stand up to the richer food too. Oh my gosh, everybody's eating at the holidays. Grandma's having fish. Dad's having steak. Better break out that Pinot Noir because it's your best friend. Remember that. I might just move on from there. I really just wanted to talk about it. Let me know if we have any questions on this. Yeah, we talk about terroir, but a winemaker's choice and influence. That's not only in New World, but that's all over the place. Now we're going to all the different regions. I'm making you work for the travels tonight, it seems like. No, we're gonna eventually get to Burgundy, but we're also going to start in Champagne. But really, it's home. If there's anything to remember, this is Burgundy. This is where all the monks do the hard work identifying vineyard sites. But we're going to first head up to Champagne, some of its northernmost reaches, for growing this grapes. Before that, I have a little thing on the French wine laws. I think all of us know this, right? But they label wines by place, by terroir. So, and that's why it's confusing. Within Burgundy, we have a celebrated cru, Chambertin. So they don't tell us that it's even from Burgundy. We have to learn that Chambertin is a Grand Cru within Burgundy. And we learn that according to French wine law, that protects these areas with its history and its tradition, and it's learned what grapes grows best where, that this is Pinot Noir, but they simply don't tell us that. We have to go to wine classes. But not only protecting the area, the varietal, it has to be Pinot Noir. It can't be anything else. It also protects a level of quality, which is represented by yield and ripeness. The level of sugars that you must have in that grape to that is providing a wine of a certain texture and quality, and then even how you can plant the grape. But here we can see that this is a premier cru, so one of the very, very best vineyards, Cros Parental. This is the producer, Mayo Camouset. And then here we have our top Grand Cru. These are all AOPs, protected appellations of origin. There's stepping stone categories, Vin de France, just a wine of France. A lot of producers, renegades, might be just labeling that way. And then there's IGPs, and then regional Burgundy, and going from there. But let's head up to France. What we're seeing here is Pinot Noir, and its role as a blend. But here in the northernmost appellation in almost France, really almost parallel with Germany, if you get any higher than this 48th parallel, you probably have a really tough time ripening the grape in the first place. And why is Champagne so crisp and bright and tart and refreshing? Because you're working with the sour underripe fruit from this this northerly climate, also going on these fossilized seashells with high limestone that also just not only cool climate, but limestone soils that preserve that acidity and brightness. But if you love Champagne, you want some takeaways? If you could have a Blanc de Blanc, which would be a white wine made from 100% Chardonnay. You could have a Blanc de Noir, a white wine made from 100% Pinot Noir. Wine gets its color from the skins. If you crush a Pinot Noir, the juice is white. It's only letting the clear juice sit with the skins of a red grape where it starts to inherit color. But if you decide to press that grape, separating the juice from the skins right away, it won't have time to inherit color. So that's how they can make a Blanc de Noir. But it's a red grape, so it'll typically provide a little more backbone and structure. So on a hot summer day, I want something crisp and bright. Maybe I want that white wine made from 100% Chardonnay, so it'll drink lighter. No way. I'm having my burger. I love it. My burgers. I want a Champagne with a little more body and weight. I want that one made from the Blanc de Noir, made from 100% Pinot Noir, because it'll drink a little bit richer and fuller than the Blanc de Blanc. But typically they're a blend. And then 30-30-30. This will provide the backbone, this provides the brightness, and this provides the flavor. And then you can sometimes see where certain champagne houses are located. So where they usually they'll source from all over these color-coded regions. We have 5 of them, major ones. Like a lot of Pinot Noir comes up from Montana and Durance, where a lot of your major producers are located. Krug, Ruinart, but Pinot Noir focused, or what grows best. Val de la Marne, it's due to the proximity of the water. Meunier grows best because it's late budding, so it's less affected by the frost that usually takes place by the river. Where Pinot Noir, earlier budding, your vineyards might be damaged in this slightly cooler influenced region with the grapes being grown by the water. Meunier, Pinot Noir. Cote de Blanc, slopes of white, means slopes. Here we have a slightly higher limestone content or chalkier soils. So Chardonnay does a little bit better. I should say chalk. So most of your Cote de Blancs or your Chardonnay focused wines are coming from Cote de Blanc. And then we have the Saison area, also Chardonnay focus. Once we get down to this deep purple, we move into a little more clay and it gets to be slightly warmer, but where Pinot Noir also thrives. Hopefully that makes sense. And then, hey, check this out. Is there more than just wonderful, delicious sparkling coming from Champagne? Yes. And you can try Coteau Champenois. It's a still wine from anywhere in Champagne. And this is another way for you to try still Pinot Noir coming from Champagne. And you can imagine that it's probably pretty light and it's pretty bright, considering this cool region comparatively to most other areas. And then this is really fun. If you want to explore rosés, they can have there's not a lot of it produced. So when you see it over here, there's a little bit more of a price, but there's Pinot Noir made in rosés from this town of Risset, which is located in the Aube, again, where Pinot Noir does slightly better on these clay, heavier soils. So you can drink rosé from Pinot Noir coming from the Aube, and you can also drink still Pinot Noirs. Well, let's head from Champagne and we're going to go down to Burgundy, which is everything we see here. Chablis being the northernmost region, this is dedicated to Chardonnay. If it's not red Pinot Noir, the white grape is, everybody knows, I bet, Chardonnay. So Burgundy is not so bad. White wine Chardonnay, red wine Pinot Noir. This is so cold up here, they focus on just Chardonnay and the lightest, most mineral, unoaked styles. Perfect oyster wine, just like a squeeze of lemon and a lick of seashell. It's amazing, refreshing. So where we're really focusing is on here, this area collectively known as Côte d'Or, the Golden Slope, recognized years ago by our monks is that the grapes ripen here on this area that gets a little extra sun. And I really like this map where you can see everything is nice and tightly hugged together. That's all the vineyards on kind of east and southeast facing slopes, east, southeast, and sometimes south facing. And they're all right by each other. And is that exposure to sunshine on these ideal mid-slope sites that ensured a level of ripeness. You all probably heard, I mean, they really just, going back quite a few hundred years ago, they really just looked to see where the snow melted first. I'm like, oh, okay, well, I have more time on that patch of the hillside to ensure a safe harvest than if it was further up or perhaps on this area of the hill that doesn't get as much sun. So that's what was really determining on what planted where and what ensured a ripe fruit. But within our Golden Slope, all the world sought after Pinot Noir, your Domaine de la Romanie Contis, your Fouriers, thousands of dollars off wine list that we'll probably never get to try. Where does it come from? The Côte de Nuit to the north. This is where all your Grand Crus are coming from. We do see some wonderful reds coming from Côte de Beaune. You can see the two cities here, like Beaune, you might say in Beaune, Dijon, you might go for a lunch or something like that. But where some of the first abbeys were established, even Dijon. But Beaune really known, Laura would say white Beaune. I don't know if that helps anybody, but this is where all your great Chardonnays of like Puligny, Montrachet, or Chassagne, Montrachet, or Marceau are coming from. But a couple different villages known for Pinot Noir. I don't know why I'm getting ahead of myself. It's Pommard and Volnay, but we'll highlight that in a second. So this is what we want to know. Once we get out of the Côte d'Or and we head further south, the vineyards start breaking apart. We're driving through the hillsides. You might see a vineyard here or a vineyard here. It's not the same idea of all these collective, but Grand Cru, Premier Crus on this ideal slope further north. It's kind of a valley region in Côte Chalonnaise. So you can drive wonderful Pinot Noir here, where up here we can no longer afford it. But great, great way for value Pinot Noir and Côte Chalonnaise, although some whites here. Mâconnais, that's where you find your Pouilly-Foussés and wonderful Chardonnays, if I had to generalize. And then Beaujolais, that's where Gamay ended up. Remember if it was one of the Philips, I'm just second guessing myself if it was good or bold, but when he ripped up all the Gamay to replanted Pinot Noir, it all ended up in the south on granite soil. So it's good. It softens out the acidity down there. Hey, this is just another way of looking at this. I'm not trying to get hung up on it. You can see that if it's labeled Bourgogne, This is our AOC wine laws. It's as if the wines could be coming anywhere in this region. It's less specific. Usually you know where the producer is located. Like we know that Fourier is located in the Gevrey Chambertin. But anyway, it's Bourgogne, entry-level bottling. This is village. This is when we start learning about the characteristics of the sites, the village. And then within those villages, then we might go to Premier Cru or sites so famous that are awarded their own AOP, their own protected appellation of origin. So we can look at it that way. And this is all for white wines, but we can see how they look similar almost, but they mean very different things. Like this is a Premier Cru within the village of Pouligny-Montrachet. This is a Grand Cru, so famous that this village Pouligny had to append its name to the most prized site, but it doesn't need the village behind it. So site so famous and so little produced. So this is us zooming in on the Côte d'Or Golden Slope. And then you guys, where does all of our famous Grand Crus for Pinot Noir come from? North or south? North, and the Côte de Nuit. And then this is some takeaways, the Gevrey Chambertin. These are takeaways. You're looking at a wine list. You don't know what to do or you don't know where to start. We haven't learned all of our hundreds of producers yet. I already know that Gevrey Chambertin, this is where most Grand Crus are located for Pinot Noir. There's 9 of them up here. And Gevrey Chambertin is known for dark fruit and structure and power, even though it's just Pinot Noir. Okay, wonderful. A lot of that is just due to common winemaking techniques that was going on with extended maceration, giving color and influence of oak, giving power and weight. Chambon-Musigny, if we just jump down to over here, we have a higher concentration of limestone soils. So what do we see with limestone soils? Preserved acidity and preserved freshness. So if this is power and weight, Gevrey Chambertin, Chambon-Musigny is the contrast to that. Light, elegant, delicate, pretty styles, super perfumed. Some of the most lovely examples of Pinot Noir. Maurice Saint-Denis is kind of like the Goldilocks of the two. Not quite the power of Gevrey, not quite the lightness of Chambon. It's the medium. There's a famous producer, Dujac, coming from Maurice Saint-Denis, and he always associated like a gaminess. These are broad generalizations, but as we're trying to cover a lot, I think a good, I want light Pinot Noir, Chambon-Musigny. I want full Pinot Noir, maybe Gevrey. Maurice Saint-Denis, although Goldilocks, this Dujac, who was known to use whole cluster, now it's driving back, giving structure, would associate like a gaminess, almost like a meaty, like savory quality of Maurice Saint-Denis. And I feel like I identify that, having tried the examples, even from hearing him say that. So it's something that I latched onto even personally. Lastly, Von Romani. This is the top tier expression. It's like the Cadillac of all villages. It has the elegance, it has the weight, it has the concentration. It has it all. So this is where you'll find, although it doesn't have the number of Grand Crus of Gevrey Chambertin, this is where like the DRC and everybody is located. Domaine de la Romani Conti. So remember, Côte de Beaune is white, but this is Pommard and this is Volnay. I like Gevrey Chambertin. I like power and weight. So my man is going to try the wine from Pommard. And remember where our structured, like hardier clone also comes from? There's a river that runs through Pommard that leaves as left behind these iron-rich deposits that is a reason for why these grapes grow with extra structure and color and weight. A little bit has to do with the soil deposits from the river that runs right through the region. Well, if Pommard is like Gevrey with power and weight, Volnay, we have more limestone again. Remember what we find in limestone? Light, elegant styles. Usually you can remember what's divided by 5 as far as classic vintages, 15, 10, 5, usually have been pretty warmer. So I just love this. And I'm sure if you've been, this is familiar. Like here are these wines that go for thousands of dollars. Look at it. It's just a few hectares in size. So not very, it's not large at all. Montrachet is like 8 hectares. La Romani sitting right up above this is like 1 point something hectares, like 1.8 hectares. It's really small. Romani, I should know, but I'm like, God, is it 8 hectares? But it's really small, and you can see that you can walk from one to the other. But this is what the monks had determined. Well, this is slightly angled down slope, So maybe the soils retain a little bit more water, but producing a wine that's slightly different, maybe a little bit heavier than this pristine 15 degree radiant southeast exposure of Romani Conti, where we get the best expression. And then these are all Grand Crus, La Grande Rue, La Tâche. La Tâche is a monopole owned all by DRC, same with Romani Conti. So Cotonou North, all the prized Pinot Noirs. And then, hey, for outside of our Champagnes and our Burgundy, a lot of your Pinot Noir is growing up in this area too, on relatively similar soils. Like if you go over to Sancerre in the Loire Valley, it's Pinot Noir for reds. You can produce reds and rosés from Sancerre, and it would just be Pinot Noir. Most of us become familiar with Sancerre with the Sauvignon Blanc from the region. If you head over to Jura, remember I was talking about my one example in an oxidative style, but a wonderful area. And then you can also try grapes like Trousseau or Ploussard that drink like a Pinot Noir, but it's one of the main red grapes further east. Great with like a mountain cheese. And then Alsace, again, same area, same latitudes, relatively shared similar climate. It's one of the, as a white wine region in Alsace, it's one of the red grapes that that's allowed in the area. And then, hey, check this out. If we went north of this, what do we get? The Pfalz. Remember, that's where our Pinot Noir from Becker comes from. If we go directly east of this, we're in Baden, where most Pinot Noir in all of Germany comes from. And that's what takes us over here. So this is Alsace. And we head on over to Baden, where Charles the Fat in 884 brought the grape, supposedly. We don't know it. If you talk to the locals, that's what they might tell you. Takes a different name. You will see Pinot Noir, but it's also known as Spätburgunder from Burgundy, but it's the most planted red. So third largest producer in the world. If we look at hectares in size, so now we're up to 12,000, grown tremendously since even the 1960s. And then versus USA, there are some articles online where France, if it was published probably slightly over 5-10 years ago, where France is still ahead of USA, but now USA is the most as far as level of plantings, followed by France and then Germany. 12% of all total plantings, that's just within Germany itself. And then again, Baden down here. And it makes sense where it's warmer, where you can ripen the fruit more successfully. And then even near into the Pfalz. Right after that is Rheinhessen, but the area that really Pinot Noir is like 70% of all plantings just within these like major wine growing regions. That's what we see. It's odd because it's further north, but it just happens to be in this little hot pocket area where Pinot Noir can ripen really well further north. And this is really fun in our Meyer Nickel, a producer that really focused on Pinot Noir when people are just talking about it like a kind of a flavorless rosé. Some people are championing it. They have a variation of Pinot Noir up in R called Frühburgunder. It's a thicker skinned variant that ripens a little bit earlier, so it has darker fruit and sometimes a little bit softer, like where it ripens almost too quickly, where it seems like it drops in acid. So it's kind of like a softer, darker fruit. Example of Pinot Noir, this Frühburgunder that you might come across from the R. Again, not something that you see on the shelves every day, but if you end up going into the right wine shop, something that you might come across. Frühburgunder, Spätburgunder. Most of it's happening down here in Baden, but we have terrific examples in Pfalz. And as temperatures are continuing to increase, you see more and more plantings. We go over to Austria down here, you still would see Pinot Noir, but it's also known as Blauburgunder. They say it's kind of scattered throughout. You probably are more likely to find other red varietals like Blaufränkisch or Zweigelt or Saint Laurent, but there is Pinot Noir. And I would associate it where most red wine comes from in Austria, which is this eastern part here known as the Burgenland area, not too far away from Hungary. It's just a slightly warmer region influenced by the lake and these Pannonian plains, so these winds that come over the area, allowing for red grapes to grow so well. But look at this. Why has this increased so darn much, just like as in Germany? Maybe do this sideways. Maybe people want to drink Pinot Noir. There's 6 minutes left, Ryan. You're not even in the New World yet. I'll be 5 minutes over, but we got to give these areas some love. So here we are in the Willamette Valley in the northwestern part. If we have what we can see just east of that is the Cascade Mountains. But as we zoom in, going from the Dundee Hills, I'll just say it. In Dundee Hills, we have these volcanic soils, these red Jory soils. The typical people usually describe the Pinot Noir from these volcanic red Jory soils is usually a little bit lighter compared to the other major soil type that makes up Willamette Valley is this marine sediment. It's an older soil. This was once an area completely underwater. So you have these fossilized remains coming from Ribbon Ridge in pretty much most areas on the western part. But the Pinot Noir coming from these marine sediments, they call it Willackenzie, is usually a little bit darker profile with a little more weight. So you have more structured, more powerful examples from this Willackenzie marine sediment, like Ribbon Ridge. But as you move east, you get more in this influence of Jory volcanic, producing lighter styles. Chehalem, further north, it's also north facing, a lot of the vineyards, but I think of even more importantly, higher elevation. So we get light examples coming from Chehalem Mountains. McMinnville and Yosemite Hills, they're right in front of what is called the Van Duzer Corridor. It's a little gap in the coastal range that allows for these cool Pacific breezes to come through the gap and kind of blow over these vineyards. And these winds, the effect on the grape is that the skins of Pinot Noir grow to be a little bit thicker in a way of protecting it from these harsh winds due to this Van Duzer gap. So McMinnville and Yosemite Hills, you usually hear about Pinot Noir with a little more tannin and a little more structure. And why? It's because of these thicker skins that develop due to their exposure of these more extreme winds. Oregon, comparatively, though, we know old world, new world, but I mean, it's further up in latitude, further north than what you see in California. So generally, like it's going to be a little bit lighter than what you see in California, but not quite as tart or earthy or reserved as what you would see in Burgundy. Hey, lastly, in Burgundy, when you're going from regional to village to premier cru and grand cru, once you get in those top quality, like $100 wines, they'll start to use new oak because that have ripe fruit to it where it can wear those flavors of oak as more of a compliment. And they can spend that little extra money on these top wines. So New World, yes, new oak, but once you get into high quality, like Grand Crus, they also, you'll see those layers of like vanilla and sweet spice as a compliment and also providing texture sometimes. So we kind of talked about all of this, and I just wanted just to see it on the map, like Dundee Hills, Jory, Ribbon Ridge. Who were the first guys to go up there in the 1960s? Hey, little trivia time. Who was the first to plant Pinot Noir in all of Oregon? Does anybody know? Kelly, maybe? It was a gentleman named Richard Sommer, Sommer, and that was in the mid-60s, but that was down in Umpqua, like Southern Oregon. Who we usually learn about is David Lett of Irie Vineyards, so I included in the invite. He was originally from California, went to UC Davis down there, but a lot of these guys what came up here in the 60s, David Lett was one of them, and he was the first to plant Pinot Noir up in Willamette. He did it in 1965 and then really had his first release in 1970s. But then you have like Dick Areth going up into like Chehalem Mountains. I think it's Areth, right? Because there's also Dick Ponzi that came up there and started planting. Adelsheim was one of the first to go up into like Chehalem Mountains. But this is a great story. So David Lett, because there was this Judgment of Paris in California, right? Chateau Montel, that brought world attention to Napa, the Chardonnays and Cabernets of there. But David Lett put his South Block Reserve, South Block 75 Reserve. It was a Pinot Noir from Dundee Hills. And these blind tastings in Paris and then in Beaune that ended up getting like second and third place. And it drew this attention to Drouhin, this famous negociant of Burgundy. And then Drouhin, after the success of David Lett's South Block Reserve, went over to invest in Oregon, and that was another way of like, or well, I am starting to establish itself, not only these pioneers and then beginning to plant, but also the success in these international competitions and then the foreign investment that resulted in that. So you see Druin over in California too. But then he didn't release, then he took South Block Reserve off the market for like 27 years. But you can now try back vintages of it. His son, Jason Lett, has released tastings from the South Block Reserve. But David Lett didn't want the attention. So he took the wine that brought him all the success off the market, which is just crazy. But we're now in California. Oh, hope you're okay. Hope you're okay. Santa Barbara. This is where Paul Giamatti was hanging out. It's supposed to be a wonderful place to go visit. Oddly enough, even though you move further south, so you think it'd be getting warmer, you see how this juts west to east? Well, there's two mountain ranges that kind of form the north and the south part of it, and it creates this crazy vacuum, just this kind of inhaling all these cool ocean airs through the Santa Barbara region. So it's one of the coolest areas for growing grapes in all of California, and that's from this little vacuum that starts to take place from these two mountain ranges. So that's where usually, if you're by the coast, it'll do so well for a wonderful Pinot Noir. So that's one of the longest growing seasons, which is what we want. We want a cool, moderate, easy going season for our healthy Pinot Noir. I'm going to zoom in on this too. In the northern part of Santa Barbara, we have Santa Maria Valley. Oops. Which is this. So we can start to see our mountain ranges, right? And just sucks in all this cool air. Santa Maria Valley up here is this Bien Nacido range. It's kind of like a Grand Cru site if they were ever to start recognizing Grand Cru sites. But some of these producers, they are on a waiting list to source their fruit from this very famous Bien Nacido vineyards. And it's blocked off like this is your row A, B, C, D. So sometimes a winery will be allotted row G of Bien Nacido vineyards, but you'll see a few producers with Bien Nacido on their label, and then you know where the fruit comes from in the northern part of Santa Maria. Underneath that, we have the Santa Ynez Valley, just down below. And where most Pinot Noir is planted is in the Santa Rita Hills. This is where Richard Sanford. Did you read my slide in the previous slide? Who's the first to plant Pinot Noir? I shouldn't say that. Was one of the first to really replant the Pinot Noir, like post-phylloxera, is this guy, Richard Sanford, who then sold off of his estate. Kind of sounds like Richard Sommer of Oregon, who planted in Southern Oregon, but this is Richard Sanford. I was asking if you read my slide. So he went down there in 1970 to focus on some Pinot Noir growing along the cool coast when no one was saying he could do it. And then moving into the 1980s, look up the winemaker for a Bon Clement, well-exposed vineyard. He went and trained in France, but you'll see a guy named Jim Clendenin, totally like bleached blonde, now it's gray, Hawaiian t-shirts, kind of looks like the dude from Big Lebowski, but one of the just great classic examples of Pinot Noir, Chardonnay, and then he plays around with other things now these days too. Sandy, Tyler, they focus on just Chardonnay and Pinot Noir. If you want a new producer to check out, Tyler's a great one. Sandy, they also focus on Pinot Noir and Chardonnay. So again, your Burgundian focus. Most of this out in the Santa Rita Hills, depending, they source fruit from different areas. There's a guy, Rajat Par, and he works with Sashi Norman. If you've seen Psalm 3, they reenact this Judgment of Paris, but they do it with Pinot Noir. The winner was this Domaine de la Côte. Well, that's a project of Sashi Norman and Rajat Par, and another label for them is Sandy. So another producer to check out besides Sandy is Domaine de la Côte. Both of them are run by Rajat Par and Sashi Norman. Okay, let's head up to Sonoma. See how big of an area this is? We kind of talked about it, but again, if you're by the coast, you're more influenced by the ocean. Cooler. UC Davis came up with a climate index scale. So there's region 1, which is the coolest, region 2, getting warmer, and then even region 3, where you might grow things like Zinfandel and Cabernet. When we get into Russian River Valley further inland, it gets to be close to like a region 3, especially as we get into areas like Chalk Hill. So the, again, style of Pinot Noir from Russian River Valley is the ripest, it's the lushest, most flush and round. You can get like 14.5 alcohol sometimes. in Russian River Valley, but I think people really love it for that ripe fruit. And who do we have in Russian River Valley but this Joseph Swan? I want to share a wonderful podcast with the winemaker of Joseph Swan. His name is Rod Berglund, who you're going to absolutely love. So anyway, Hirsch flowers, they're all along the coast, lighter styles. Joseph Swan, William Salem, pioneers in like the 70s and then like the 80s, lusher, riper, fuller. Joseph Swan, William Salem, Flowers, Hirsch. Hirsch was part of this movement called In Pursuit of Balance in like 2013-14 when they were moving towards wines of restraint. So this is Yarra Valley. This is Mornington Peninsula. This is Geelong. These are all great for Pinot Noir. And why? Because we're in the south eastern part known as Victoria, where it's more directly influenced by the cool Arctic just right below. So it's just that cooler growing season, again, right by the water where Pinot Noir can do so well. Hey, and remember from our first slide, Mac Forbes, upper Yarra Valley, further south, higher altitude, lighter, brighter styles. We move further north, but in the lower lying Yarra Valley, maybe more clay, we get softer, rounder styles. So it's divided in the lower and the upper, rounder, richer, lighter, more elegant. It grows great for Pinot Noir. And this is supposed to be much like the Hamptons of Australia, this Mornington Peninsula, where there's a lot of wonderful boats and just beautiful like beach scenery. But again, by the coast where Pinot Noir can do really well. Check out this Moradok from Mornington Peninsula. Domaine Chandon, one of the first to invest in the area, coming from Moet and Chandon. Same thing that we kind of saw in even California and Oregon's history. Foreign investment, Druin in Oregon. We also saw Moet. We saw like Tet and J focus in Carneros, Louis Roeder focusing up in Anderson Valley. And then guys, if it's not just Victoria, with these cool Arctic areas, Yarra Valley with Pinot Noir, oh, by far, I'm sorry, I'm rattling stuff off kind of right now because I know I'm a little late on time, but in that Somme 3, where this Domaine de la Côte from Santa Barbara, their Pinot Noir did so well, one of the other New World wines, Pinot Noirs, that was used in this tasting was By Far. That also did really well, and they're based out of Geelong. So By Far, Geelong, Moradok, Mornington Peninsula, Yarra Valley. You can try Mac Forbes or even like Ben Haynes. This guy's great. Outside of that, Adelaide Hills, it's different than Adelaide Plains. It's just high elevation, or they might use Pinot Noir more for like sparkling wines. And check this out. You guys are great. We went through a lot, but if it's not Germany, just in the old world, we're in the new world. Are people saying Pinot Noir, this is our best foot forward. This is what's going to define our region. This is our focus. You could say, well, I'm at Oregon, thanks to David Lett, and Dick Ponzi, Dick Eric, all those guys. But the other place would be Central Otago, where it has the most concentrated plantings, maybe and more strong of a focus than anywhere else. Central Otago. And again, we're in the southern hemisphere, so as we move further south, it gets to be cooler, away from the equator. And as two different islands, New Zealand, everything is maritime influenced. Well, here in these protected mountainsides of Central Otago, it's one of the only continental climates in all of New Zealand, similar to what we see in Burgundy, with cool winters and hot, dry summers that allow Pinot Noir to do so well. Not only being some of these producers, Felton Road, Ripon, Burn Cottage, Canterbury just north of that is more of a developing region that is also now hanging their hat on Pinot Noir, but Central Otago, continental climate, protected by these inland mountains, and we're at slightly higher elevation. And then this is us going in between these mountain ranges. You can see a lot of this is by bodies of water. And it's like us breaking down the jory soils of Dundee versus the fuller styles of Ribbon Ridge with their Willackenzie soils. What the heck is going on in Central Otago? Just keep on taking our notes. Wanaka, cooler, rainier, lighter styles. Gippsland, higher elevation, coolest site, lighter styles. Once we get into Bannockburn, You can see it by this body of water, the Kawaro River, but one of the warmest regions, producing the fullest styles. Maybe this is like my Russian River Valley compared to my Sonoma coast. Warm, dry, ripe, full, cool, high elevation, light, bright. I'm not by the ocean, but I'm set elevation, right? Cromwell, Lowbourne, Pisa, just a high density of plantings, relatively warm. Alexandra further south. You see the strongest diurnal variation from cool days to warm nights. So they say it's kind of, it's built on a lot of structure with preserved acidity and developed ripeness. And we're almost there, you guys. Thank you so much. I hope you're having fun. But I wanted to bring up South Africa. And as we move to the coast, in Walker Bay, there's this guy, Timothy Hamilton Russell, that was the first to plant in this region. And it's kind of going against the large cooperative, this KWV, that was running things, excuse me, like all the way up into like the 90s. So it's these people, just like Richard Sanford out in Santa Barbara, planting Pinot Noir in 1970, like David Lett planting Pinot Noir in 1965. Here we have this guy, Hamilton Russell, planting Pinot Noir in Walker Bay in the Himalayan Earth region, Himalayan Ard region of Cape South Coast. And then it was his winemaker, Peter Finlayson, that started his own label. From those that came to our South Africa class, you might remember Crystal as this kids of Peter Finlayson, but pioneers, Walker Bay. And then in South America, we're going to keep heading south, going underneath areas of like Mendoza, where our Malbec comes from, and we end up in this area of Patagonia and Rio Negro. If you like Italian wines, you might hear of Sassicaia, the very first super Tuscan producer. If you want to know what his grandson is up to, he also helps out with their estate in Tuscany, but really he's now focused in Rio Negro, and it was Pinot Noir, and he was inspired to go down there after tasting some Pinot Noir at an event in New York. But now that's his main focus. He does biodynamic farming down there. His label is called Chakra. He's even called he even does this new collaboration. It's on Chardonnay, but it's called Manque with Rouleau of Burgundy. And then if you cross over the Andes Mountains, where are we going to grow Pinot Noir? Where it's really warm or where it's really cool? We need a cool influence. So we can get that as near Casablanca in the Aconcagua region. With these producers like Villard first to plant out there, it's kind of like Hamilton Russell. Veramonte does some cool stuff in Kingston, kind of the pioneers out there too. Namari is a little bit further north. All right, 11 minutes over. Not too bad. We had a few minutes delay in our start as our little warm up. Is anybody drinking delicious Pinot Noir? You want to take yourself off mute, or if you have some questions? I forgot who we sent the wines out to. I think there was one or two of you that might be drinking these tonight. I hope you're enjoying them. I love them. They're so different from each other, and I like both of them for even this time of year. Like, even though the Mac Forbes look lighter in color, I still think you see this softness of fruit. And even though the Becker is like darker in color, there's still this tartness. I think this, sometimes people say crunchy, trying to describe that almost acidic, like crisp character. It reminds me of that. Thank you. Hopefully that was fun.
That was fun. Thank you.
Thank you. As always. Well, all right. Yeah, I hope you enjoy the wines. Is anybody else just like opening something that you don't have to? That's not one of these two. You're like, oh my gosh, this is so delicious. Or maybe there's a Pinot Noir that you really love. It's hard. You know, Burgundy is a difficult region because it can be hit and miss so often. Hey, if you love this stuff, we are doing I'm not trying to promote, but it's kind of exciting. Like if you're interested and just curious, we're doing a series of Burgundy classes. Where we're going into the specific villages. So we're going to spend like a whole hour on just Chevry Chambertin, a whole hour on Marie Saint Denis, a whole hour on so it'll be really fun. Then you start, because that's where people get excited. Like you go into all these nicks and crannies, like, well, what is the difference? Like what would I expect from this Premier Cru, or why is this important? Like, why do they even label it this way? Is this crazy? Like, no.
Are you going to send us the wines?
We have wines for it. They're more
Yeah.
expensive.
That's what I was wondering.
They're more expensive. Like we have 2 wines, and for the class, the packaging for delivery and the wines, like we have to do it at 200, and we're finalizing it. We really want to always try to get some, like, but it's hard. Like it's like you're really having to, like, okay, let's have a village, let's have a premier cru, maybe have a couple different like vintages that we can maybe see, like, oh, this year was warmer, this, like, but to keep it like in an affordable, it's hard. Like we're like, God, should we do, like, we find maybe like a good one or two, we're like, should we just order that, and then maybe we could raise the price and say 300, because we could maybe offer a grand cru that they're like, oh my gosh, it's not easy. That's why we have Mac Forbes and Frederick Becker. All right, I'll let you get going.
No worries. That's great. Thank you. This helped. Thank you.
Yeah, let me know if you have any questions. We'll try to get the slides and recording out to you tomorrow. That shouldn't be a problem. So
I was going to ask how you get those. You email them, yeah?
Yeah. We just send them, like, we try to do it the day afterwards, but if the day gets ahead of me, which it can sometimes, it's like, oh gosh, then it's like the day after. But no, we should send it out tomorrow, so everybody will have the recording and like outlines and maybe a little extra bonus or two with Rod Berglund of Joseph Swan Vineyard interviews.
Great.
All right.
Thank you.
Your notes from the soil class were excellent. I meant to send you an email, but I didn't.
Oh, the soil one?
Yeah, those notes were excellent. Thank you very much.
Oh, that's a fun one. Yeah, thank you. I think that it's just a fun to create the conversation and try to make sense of some of these things that we talk about, but I don't think we oftentimes pay, like, do we understand what this might imply? Like, okay, just so build understanding with these things that I don't know if we always, we don't always take the time to build the understanding that are associated with those. So I'm happy to see that. Yeah. How they're formed, and then the actual textures themselves. And then really, if it's well drained or water retentive, can be a big thing, and heat absorption and tension. happy to hear good things about the classes. No, it's nice to have you here. Limestone and clay, volcanic. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
Good. Yeah.